Welcome back to Moonlight Confessions. I'm Anna, 41. This story is about the third person in my marriage. My husband's mother. It started as help, turned into control, and ended the night I finally said no. Here's how the boundary broke and how I rebuilt it. If you'd met us the day we closed on the townhouse, you'd say we were the sensible kind of happy. We chose the paint ourselves, negotiated the interest rate like adults, and took the obligatory photo with the keys, his arm around me, my head on his shoulder, both of us pretending not to notice that the porch light flickered when the wind pushed just hard enough. My husband, let's call him Daniel, is 42, a systems person. Spreadsheets for vacations. Reminders to drink water. He irons on Sundays because Mondays should not begin with creases. I'm the kind of organized that looks like calm until you see the calendar behind it. I run operations for a small nonprofit. Order and I get along. The townhouse is 8 minutes from Barbara, Daniel's mother. We used to live 30 minutes away, which is far enough for people to make plans and close enough that plans sometimes happen. When the new job and the lower mortgage pointed us toward this side of town, Barbara said what mothers say when their children move closer. I won't be in your hair. I'll just be here if you need me. If you'd asked me then, I would have believed her. I did believe her. People deserve the chance to mean what they say before you decide they don't. The first week, she brought a casserole that could have fed a small choir and a spare key with a ribbon on it. For emergencies, she said, holding it like a blessing. The ribbon was blue with tiny white dots, the kind craft stores sell in rolls you promise you'll use again. I put the key in the dish by the door and told myself emergencies are rare and kindness is daily. She has a way of walking into a room like someone who remembers when you were shorter. It used to charm me. She calls Daniel my boy, in a voice that's mostly past tense and a little present. When we were dating, it felt like a story about who he'd been. Once we married, it began to sound like a story about who I'd never be. We moved in on a Saturday. On Sunday, Barbara texted, "Can I stop by to drop cookies?" I said yes. She arrived with 3 tins and opinions arranged like sprigs of parsley. "Oh," she said, scanning the kitchen, "you put the plates down here. You'll bend every time you unload the dishwasher." She opened and closed drawers like a magician, revealing that doves had been there all along. "Also, I know a better spot for the knives. You want the block further from the stove." Splatter, dear. I'm not made of glass. I can handle advice. I thanked her and said we'd live in it a little before we decided where things went. She smiled the way people smile when they don't hear the part of your sentence that matters to you. "Of course," she said, and stacked plates into a new cabinet while I stood there with a tea towel in my hand like a flag no one salutes anymore. It was small, the way water under a door is small until you notice your socks are wet. The second week, I found the pantry reorganized. Labeled bins had been relabeled with her handwriting, neat, looping a teacher's hand. Bulk rice moved to the top shelf because ants can't climb that high, which is not how ants work, but the label made it look official. On a sticky note tucked into the spice drawer she had written, "Moved the cumin to be with the other hot things. XOB. I read the note 3 times because the heart threw me off. It's hard to be angry at a heart. When Daniel came home, he looked delighted. "She made it more efficient," he said. "You know Mom in kitchens." He kissed my temple and reached for a cookie. "It's her love language." "That's beautiful," I said. "I would love to choose my own kitchen's language." He laughed the way people laugh when they think the joke is mutual. "Pick your battles, Annie." We didn't have a fight. We just stepped to different sides of a sentence and stayed there. Barbara's visits multiplied with the kind of logic that looks like manners. She'd text, "In your area. Quick drop-in." Quick became coffee at our table with her keys on the placemat like a place card. She'd ask about work and then about Daniel's back. He threw it out once at 27 and has mentioned it every winter since. "Sit up straight," she'd say to him. "Remember what Dr. Klein said." If he adjusted, she looked proud. If he didn't, she looked at me as if posture is a team sport I was coaching badly. When we did argue, not about her, about bills or dishes or nothing at all, her name appeared on Daniel's phone like a referee's whistle. "Everything okay, sweetie? Breathe, she means well." He would show me the texts like they were mint leaves in hot water. Soothing by default. It took me longer than I want to admit to notice that someone else was in the room we called ours every time life got loud. "I don't want to be ungrateful," I told my friend Nora over lunch. "It's just, I don't remember inviting a third person into every decision." Nora runs a daycare. Her policy on boundaries has teeth. People either understand doors, she said, or they think every hallway leads to them. I wrote doors in my notebook like it was a new word. Barbara's spare key stopped living in the dish by the door. I didn't notice the day it left. I noticed the morning I came home early and found her inside, humming, a vase in her hand, the hallway smelling like the lemon spray she keeps in her purse. Thought I'd put these flowers in water, she said. They looked thirsty through the window. I stood there with my tote bag on my shoulder and my brain did a thing brains do when reality arrives uninvited. It looked for the nearest reasonable explanation. Maybe Daniel told her to come in. Maybe I forgot I'd asked her. Maybe this is a story where I'm the one who needs to loosen up. Text first next time? I said gently because I am a gentle person who has learned to say please to lifeless objects. Just so I'm not surprised. Of course, dear, she said. I didn't want the flowers to die. She left the lemon smell behind. The kitchen looked cleaner. So did something I didn't have a name for yet, a line that felt stepped over. I told Daniel that night, let's set a house rule. Text before stopping by. For everyone. Even your mother. She was helping, he said. She's excited we're close. I'm excited we're close too. That doesn't mean the house is a lobby. He looked at the ceiling, which plumbers say is where couples go when they don't have an answer. I'll talk to her, he said and kissed my forehead like a period. The talk must have happened because a week went by with only 2 just near you texts, both of which I kindly deflected. Then came Sunday dinner that wasn't. I had planned a quiet evening, soup, a movie, early bed. At 4:30 Barbara texted, roast in the oven. See you at 6. Daniel said you needed a break. I read it twice. I had not needed a break, I had needed quiet. Daniel, cheerful, said, Mom wants to try a recipe. It'll be nice. I wanted to say that nice is a word we use to coat things in sugar when we don't have time to check for ingredients. Instead I said, I'm not hosting tonight. He said, you won't have to do anything. You always have to do something when someone brings their idea of help into your house. She arrived with the roast and with opinions in a tote. The rug would look better turned, the entry bench should be on the other wall, the art should be centered using the piano, not the couch. She spoke like a general arguing with gravity. Then she corrected me about salt in front of Daniel, and I watched him split into 2 men. The boy who wants to be a good son and the husband who hears his wife go quiet. After dishes, she hugged him in the hallway and whispered something into his shoulder where I couldn't hear it. He kissed her cheek and promised something in a voice I recognized as the one he uses to calm it when the server misbehaves. She left the key on the dish by the door. I might have imagined the way it glinted. That night I didn't sleep. I made a list called Boundaries on a page usually reserved for groceries. Text before entering. No surprises, especially not people in the house. Shared decisions stay shared. No third-party coaches during arguments. The kitchen is ours. We choose its language. It didn't feel radical, it felt like doors. When I showed Daniel the list, he looked both tired and relieved. She'll take this hard, he said. You know how Mom is. I also know how I am, I said. I can be kind without keeping the door off the hinges. We rehearsed the conversation the way you rehearse for phone interviews. Short sentences, no apologies disguised as reasons. He agreed to say it. I agreed not to jump in. It felt like we were on the same team again, just long enough for me to believe it would stay that way. He called her on speaker at the kitchen table. Mom, he began, we love you and we need a house rule. Text before stopping by. And no rearranging without asking. We want to settle in our way. Silence. Then Barbara's voice, soft and sharp, like lace with a hidden wire. I'm your mother. I don't need an invitation to my son's home. Daniel tried again. It's not about invitation. It's about courtesy. Courtesy, she said, would be gratitude for all I've done. Who found your mortgage broker? Who negotiated your washer replacement? If I waited for texts, the roast would still be raw. I appreciate you, he said. We appreciate you. The rule still stands. She exhaled into the phone like a storm deciding whether to rain. If your wife has a problem with me, she can say it. I just did, I said calmly. We love you. We also love notice. She hung up with a small click that sounded bigger than the call. The next week was quieter. She texted twice before stopping by. She didn't move anything. I cooked soup without commentary. We watched a show and fell asleep on the couch, The kind of night you remember only because later you'll wish that's what the hard parts looked like. Then the group chat appeared. Family plans. Members. Me, Daniel, Barbara, and inexplicably Barbara's friend Judy, who sells candles like a side hustle and behaves like a parliament. Barbara posted a poll. Sunday brunch at ours? Or drop in at yours? Options. Ours at 11, ours at 1, ours at 3. No option for not this week. I watched Daniel type we're booked, delete it, type Annie's mom might, delete it, and finally send, we'll be at yours at 1. I stepped into the hallway and breathed the kind of breath you take when you're counting. My phone buzzed. Nora. Doors, remember? I texted back a door emoji and the word try. When we arrived at Barbara's, she greeted me with a kiss to the air and a new idea. My hair would look softer if I let it grow out. You have the face for it, she said, which is the kind of compliment that unpacks into something you didn't ask to carry. She served brunch like a ceremony and put leftovers in labeled containers for our fridge. I'll drop these by, she said. No need to text, I'll be quick. Text, I said, smiling like my mouth knew the rules better than I did. Please. Of course, she said, which is a word that can mean yes or you'll see depending on who says it. Tuesday afternoon while working from home I heard the front door. It was a clean sound, practiced. I came out of the bedroom with my laptop still open and nearly collided with a stranger in our hallway, a man with a tool belt and a polite, startled face. Mounting the TV, he said. Barbara let me in. I stood very still, the way you do when dogs you don't know are deciding whether you are part of the house. We didn't schedule that, I said. And Barbara doesn't live here. He shifted his weight. She said it's a surprise. For Daniel. He pronounced Daniel like a password. Stop, I said, not to him, to the world that thinks women should be nice while their walls change. Please leave. I'll call if we want the work done. He blinked, apologized, and backed out with a half bow. The door closed. The house exhaled. I sat on the floor with my laptop and laughed, a sound that felt like crying. Remembered it could be sharp. I texted Daniel. A handyman just came to mount our TV as a surprise. Your mother let him in. He replied with a typing bubble that kept appearing and disappearing like weather. Then I'll fix it. 2 words that mean I don't know how more often than they mean anything else. That night he tried to make it a miscommunication. She thought she was helping, he said. I'll remind her about the rule. She didn't forget the rule, I said. She tested it. He rubbed his eyes. She'll be hurt if you push. I'll be hurt if I don't, I said. And I live here. We slept in a quiet that wasn't restful. Morning made coffee but not peace. Barbara texted at 9. He was highly recommended, I got a discount. You're welcome. I typed 3 responses and deleted 2. I settled on, no entry without notice. No vendors without us. Please respect our home. She wrote back, I raised Daniel. I know what's best for him. I stared at the sentence until it said the part she didn't write. And I decide what's best for you if you want to be with him. I screenshotted the thread not to circulate it, but to keep my brain from telling me later that I'd dreamed it. Then I took the spare key off the dish, slid it into an envelope and wrote for emergencies text first on the front. When Daniel came home I handed him the envelope. It goes back to your mother, I said. With the note. We keep one spare with Jamal next door. Emergencies don't require family. He looked pained, like I was taking something from him that belonged to both of us. She'll read this as rejection. It's a boundary, I said. We tried the soft version. It didn't take. He held the envelope, turned it over like it might tell him what to do, and finally nodded. I'll bring it tomorrow. Today, I said. Before brunch becomes a home inspection. He went after dinner. I stayed home and rearranged the pantry the way my hands wanted it, not the way a note did. I put the cumin where I reach for it without thinking. I put the cookies in a bin high enough that you have to want them. I made the labels mine again. It felt small and also like I was moving the couch back to its rightful wall after someone rotated it while I was at the store. When Daniel returned, he looked older by a day. She cried, he said. She said she won't come if she's not welcome. Everyone is welcome, I said. The spare key is not. He nodded. We watched a show without talking much. He laughed at the right places. I smiled at the laugh. The credits rolled. We went to bed with the kind of care you give a glass you're not sure belongs on the top shelf. 2 days later, Barbara texted a picture of the front door, ours, with a caption, Dropped off soup. Didn't come in. Still love you. The bowl sat in a cooler bag like she'd left a baby on a doorstep. I brought it inside, warmed enough for two, and ate in silence while Daniel used his fork as punctuation. She's trying, he said. So am I said, and put the leftovers away with labels that matched the food. A week passed. The group chat rested. My chest did too. We made our own dinner, just us, 3 nights in a row. The porch light flickered only once. I joked we should keep it that way, 1 flicker per week. He laughed like maybe we were in the same book again, if not the same chapter. Then came the day the lock stuck. It had been sticky since we moved in, a millimeter of misalignment, you could sweet talk with a hip bump. I scheduled a locksmith for Friday afternoon. Barbara texted Friday morning, "Don't worry. I sent my guy. He'll take care of it." My guy had a name, an invoice, and an appointment window. Her guy was a concept that included the door already opening to him. I wrote back, "Cancel him. We have someone scheduled." She answered, "Too late. He's on his way. He knows the house." I stood in the hallway and felt the shape of the story stand up too. I called my locksmith, apologized, and said I'd keep the appointment anyway. Then I opened the door to a man who said, "Barbara told me not to bother you, sweetheart," and heard my own voice, calm and not sweet at all. "This house bothers me first." He blinked, confused. "The world is kind to people who assume access. You want me to wait for your husband?" "I want you to leave," I said, and held the door open the way people do in movies when they've finally decided to be the person they are in private. He left. The hallway got very quiet. I texted Daniel what happened and added, without emoji, "This is not a lock. This is a boundary." He wrote back, "I know. I'll talk to her," and for the first time I believed he meant the talk part, not the her part. That evening, before he came home, I sat at the table and wrote the first draft of the sentence I would use for the rest of the story. "I love you. I will not live with a third person in our marriage." I read it out loud to the empty room so my mouth would remember it even if my resolve forgot. Barbara did not come by that night. She did not text. The silence felt like weather you could plan around. I wish that were where the line held. It isn't. The next morning at 7:12 a.m., my phone buzzed with a notification from the video doorbell. Front door. Motion. The thumbnail showed Barbara's coat, the cooler bag, and her hand moving toward the camera. I opened the app. The audio caught her voice, soft and near, "Just checking the new lock." Keys jingled. The handle turned. The deadbolt held. She sighed, a small, disappointed sound, and left the soup. I watched the clip twice. Then I forwarded it to Daniel without commentary. He replied, "Can we talk tonight?" I typed "We will" and put my phone face down. The house hummed, the porch light flickered once, and somewhere down the block a dog barked like a reminder that all doors are choices. I made coffee, opened my notebook, and wrote the title for the next page. "The Night I Said No." The clip from the doorbell lived on my phone all afternoon like a glass I was careful not to drop. 7 seconds. Barbara's coat, Barbara's keys, Barbara's hand on the handle that didn't turn. The deadbolt did its one job. She sighed, left soup, and walked away. It was almost sweet if you didn't know the part where she tried the lock first. I forwarded the clip to Daniel without commentary because I didn't want the text to be the part he remembered. We agreed to talk that night, and the agreement sat between us all day like a healthy plant you don't water because you want to see if it can live on its own. I set the table with 2 plates and left the cooler bag closed. The house looked neutral. No candles, no music, the boxes by the door turned so their labels faced the wall. I didn't want an audience. I wanted a surface. Daniel walked in at 6:40, loosened his tie, and reached automatically for the bag. He has always been a man who opens containers as a love language. He stopped when he saw my face. "Okay," he said, hands up like a traffic cop told him to breathe. "Okay." I picked up my notebook and didn't sit. "I'm going to say this once the way I wrote it," I said, "so I don't bargain with it later." He nodded slow. "I love you," I said, "and I will not live with a third person in our marriage. I will not live with secret keys, surprise vendors, or guest codes used like back doors. The doorbell clip is not soup, it's a test. If your mother needs us, she can text. If she wants to help, she can ask. If she wants access, she can earn it by respecting the door." He rubbed his jaw the way he does when a spreadsheet won't balance. "She thought she was checking the new lock." "She was checking whether the lock replaced her," I said. "It did. That's the point." Silence did a slow lap around the kitchen. I poured water I didn't drink. Can we not turn this into a war? He asked finally. She'll be hurt. I'm not asking you to go to war, I said. I'm asking you to be home. He exhaled, looked at the floor and then at me. What does being home look like to you? Spell it out. I'm not good at this kind of fog. I opened my notebook and read the lines I'd written while the kettle took its time. 1. Text before coming. 2. No entering if no one answers, even to just drop soup. 3. No vendors or workers without us here ever. 4. No group chat polls that don't include no as an option. 5. When we argue, no third-party coaching from anyone including your mother. And 6. Any spare key lives with Jamal next door. Family keys are for emergencies that start with sirens. He winced at the last one, not because of the content, but because it meant telling his mother she was not the emergency. I'll say it, he said after a minute. I'll say all of it. He gestured uselessly with both hands like the air was an interface. She'll hear it as punishment. It's a door, I said. She can hear it however she wants. It will still be a door. We ate the soup because it was there and because I didn't trust myself not to throw it away with the bag. Tasted like thyme and a recipe meant for 3 people. We agreed to invite her for a conversation the next evening at 6, with a timer on the counter and no food on the table. The rules were simple. 1 person speaks, 1 person repeats, no fixing in the middle. I could see Daniel relax just at the existence of instructions. He is a man who believes almost anything can be done if the steps are numbered. Barbara texted at 8. Soup on the porch. Thought of you. I answered, thank you. Next time please text before coming. Her reply arrived with the confidence of someone who has been right longer than I've been alive. I did text. You just saw it late. She hadn't, but I didn't correct her. See you tomorrow at 6, I wrote. We want to talk as a family. She sent a thumbs up emoji which looks like agreement and feels like a dare. She arrived at 5:58 with lipstick perfect and a tote bag full of papers no one asked for. Warranties, coupons, a printout about back care because Daniel's posture apparently is a joint project she refuses to sunset. She kissed the air near my cheek as if my face had moved since Sunday. Shall I put the kettle on? She asked. No tea, I said gently. Conversation first. We took our places. Me and Daniel on one side of the table, Barbara on the other, like a small, polite negotiation where the outcome is already the room. I set my phone timer for 30 minutes and placed it face up. I'll start, Daniel said because we'd agreed he should. Mom, we love you. We're grateful for everything you've done. We also need house rules. He read the 6 lines I'd written, his voice steady in the way people read instructions when they are fixing something they want to keep. Barbara laughed, not mean, just surprised that air could hold those words. House rules. Daniel, I raised you. I don't need rules to come see my son. You need our rules to come into our home, he said. He looked at me and I watched him decide to mean it. Barbara turned to me as if the room had been waiting for her to pivot. Annie dear, she said, all lace no wire, this feels chilly. I'm sorry if I overstepped with the handyman. I wanted to spare you the headache of finding someone. The headache wasn't the mount, I said. It was the permission that should have been ours. I was trying to help, she said, and the word trying landed like a stamp onto a package not addressed to me. I believe you, I said. I also believe myself when I say I want to choose who opens my door. She blinked, like maybe she hadn't expected the sentence to be that simple. And the group chat? I added. It needs a no option. Otherwise it's not a plan, it's a performance. Her mouth tightened. Family means showing up. Family means asking where to show up, I said. She looked at Daniel then, bypassing me the way grown children become conduits if you let them. Are you really okay with this? She asked him softly, a tone that smelled like childhood and winter and the managers he still wants to impress. I miss you. I'm here, he said. He didn't reach for her hand. I noticed because I always notice his hands. Barbara's eyes glossed. I've been alone a long time, she said. Your father never cared where I was. You know that. I thought, she swallowed. I thought you wanted me in your life. I do, he said. In my life. Not in my door. The timer ticked into the silence. She glanced at the phone like time was rude. I'll text, she said finally, like she was agreeing to wear a color she didn't love to a wedding she didn't plan. I won't send anyone. But I don't like this tone. I don't like being surprised in my hallway, I said. Tone is a glove. The hand is the door. She shook her head once, the way people do when the weather offends them. Fine. And the key? With Jamal, Daniel said. For emergencies. She smiled with all her teeth, the kind you get cleaned every 6 months. I am an emergency sometimes, she said lightly. You'll see when the baby comes. It was the first time she'd said the word out loud since we moved. Not if, not someday when. I felt something inside me step back and sit down. We're not talking about the future, I said. We're talking about the door. She raised both hands like a robber being robbed. Heavens. The door. Her voice softened into something almost kind. Annie dear, if it makes you feel safer to lock me out. Respected, I said. It makes me feel respected. She nodded once as if she had heard the word and decided to let it live. Okay, she said. No more surprises. But Daniel, she looked at him like a tugboat looks at a ship. You'll still call your mother. I will, he said. As a son. Not as a back in trance. The timer timed. We ended it there because endings matter. At the door she hugged him a second longer than normal and patted my shoulder the way adults pat children when the children say something too big for their mouths. You're very organized, she said to me like a diagnosis. To a fault. I closed the door and locked it, not like a statement, just like a habit. Daniel leaned against the wall and exhaled everything he had saved for later. That could have gone worse, he said. It could have, I agreed. It also could have gone better. He smiled without enjoying it. You're very organized, he said, and it almost sounded like flirtation if you've ever loved someone who makes lists to sleep. We slept that night the way you sleep after flights you didn't miss. Tired in a just way. Boundaries are funny. People think they're the end of a story. They're the beginning of a different one. For a week, Barbara texted before stopping by. Twice she didn't stop by at all, once she asked, which is the invisible gift of a question. Sometimes the answer saves everyone a drive. The group chat returned with polls that included no thanks. The handyman did not come back. The door behaved. Then, like any system, ours was audited by reality. It started small. A Thursday ping at 7:04 a.m., dropping a lasagna on your porch before work. Don't worry about texting. Just heat. She had technically texted before coming, she had not asked. I replied please text to ask and left it at that. The cooler bag waited when I returned from a meeting, sweating well. I moved it inside, not as a reward, more like a concession to refrigeration. Friday at 11, a calendar invite appeared on my phone. Brunch, Barbara's, Sunday 1 p.m., sent to Daniel, me and Judy. No message, no question, just a square on a grid that looked like obligation. Daniel declined it and I felt something in my chest stand up straighter than my posture. Saturday dawned with rain that sounded like a decision. At 10 the doorbell rang. I checked the camera. Barbara stood on the porch with a poncho and determination. Can I pop in? Her text came through as she peered up at the lens like it might blink yes. Now's not a good time. Love you. I typed. My thumb hovered. I sent it. He rang again once, polite. Then she left. The clip caught her mouth forming the words unbelievable to no one but the weather. Daniel came back from the gym and watched the clip without talking. I should go over there, he said. You should call her, I said. And say the rule out loud until it sounds like love to both of you. He called. She cried. He listened. He didn't fix, which might be the bravest thing he did all month. I'll come by tomorrow, he said, but we aren't hosting. We made plans. The plan was to eat eggs in our socks and read the paper like people who knew where their chairs belonged. It felt scandalous to put that on a calendar. Sunday at noon the group chat lit up. See you at 1. Judy added a gif of clinking mimosas. Daniel answered, we're keeping it simple today. Rain check. Barbara replied with a single period. I didn't know punctuation could be a mood until that one. At 1:15 our doorbell rang again. I checked the camera, expecting Barbara with a new bag of mercy. It was Jamal from next door holding an envelope and an apology. This showed up stuck in your door, he said. Didn't want it to get wet. The envelope had my name in Barbara's handwriting, neat and looping like a music teacher. Inside was the spare key, the one we'd returned with the note. Attached was a post-it, in case of real emergency. Mothers always know when that is. I stood in the doorway with Jamal watching rain stitch the air and I felt it, the no standing in me like a tree. Keep the key, I asked him. If you're willing. Gladly, he said, slipping it into his pocket like a pact. You too good. We're learning doors, I said. He nodded like a man who pays attention to hinges. That night Daniel and I ate our scandalous eggs and read the paper. At the bottom of page A3 in an article about urban planning someone said, "Good fences aren't walls, they're maps." I clipped it and taped it inside my notebook under boundaries like it had been meant for kitchens all along. The restitution curve bent as curves do toward testing. Tuesday afternoon, Barbara texted Daniel, not the group. You seem tense on the phone. Want me to bring dinner? I could straighten the pantry while it bakes. He was in a meeting. I wasn't. I watched the gray typing bubble pulse on my husband's screen like a heartbeat I didn't consent to. When he came home, I didn't pick a fight with the bubble. I picked a room. No more side channels, I said. If she texts you about our home, loop me in. If she needs support, give it. If she asks for access, say, ask us. He unlocked his phone, handed it to me and said, loop yourself. It wasn't defiance. It was a small surrender to the idea that privacy is not a secret handshake when we're talking about the house we share. I added myself to the thread. I wrote, Hi Barbara, saw your message. We're covered for dinner. Thank you. Pantry stays as is. She sent back a thumbs up emoji again, which I decided for my own peace, meant agreement this time, not audit. Wednesday night, Daniel suggested we meet outside for the next few visits, her house, a diner, a park if the weather behaved. So the house stops being the field, he said. We can still see her without the door being a test every time. Dates, not drop-ins, I said. And we set them. He smiled. We set them. The first diner date went better than anyone had money on. Barbara ordered coffee and corrected herself twice when she almost said my house instead of your house. She asked about my work and listened like a woman learning to sit on her hands. When Daniel went to the bathroom, she leaned toward me and said, I'm used to being needed. I said, I'm used to needing quiet. She stirred her coffee and said, that sounds reasonable, the way someone might say a fruit is seasonal but they'll eat it anyway. We paid, tipped well, and walked out under a sky that had the decency to keep its weather to itself. In the parking lot, she hugged me with both arms and said, You're very organized. I said, thank you, and let it be only what it was. A week later, the group chat tried on a new trick. Family fundraiser Saturday. Judy wrote, everyone to Barbara's to assemble boxes for the shelter. There were 3 exclamation points, which I believe are one too many for any cause, even good ones. Barbara added, Annie, your label maker would be perfect. I typed we donate, we can't host, and deleted it. I typed count me for a money donation and kept it. Daniel added I'll swing by for an hour and did. He brought home pictures of neatly stacked boxes and Barbara in an apron like a flag. He looked proud and a little sad, the way you look when you realize some of the things you love about a person are the same things you need to measure for fit. That night he said, I booked a couples session. Just one. To talk about. He waved toward the door. Maps. I'll go, I said. If we can agree the goal is not to draw a line around your mother. It's to draw a line around us. He nodded. Us. The therapist had warm lamps and no clock in sight, which is how you know someone knows what time is for. We talked about enmeshment without using the word because sometimes labels make people defensive before they make them brave. We practiced sentences that start with I and end with periods. Daniel said, I feel torn, and I said, I feel erased, and neither of us argued with the grammar of the other's feeling. We left with 2 assignments. Schedule 2 weeks of dates. Schedule in writing 2 visits with Barbara. Small, specific, doable, like rearranging a pantry with labels that actually match the food. The next morning I found a text from Barbara at 6:07 a.m. Thinking of you. Key with Jamal, yes. Texting first, yes. I can learn new tricks. It made me smile, which I wrote down because it felt like a page I'd want to remember later if the book ever got heavy again. At lunch, Nora asked, so what changed? Nothing, I said, and it was the happiest answer I could give. We did. The door stayed a door. She raised her glass like a toast and said, to doors. 2 things can be true. Improvement and impulse. On a mild Saturday, Daniel and I came back from the farmer's market with a bag of pears that bruised if you looked at them wrong. As we turned onto our street, I saw Barbara's car parked 3 houses down. I felt my spine stiffen and my hands relax at the same time. She was on our porch, texting, eyes up at the camera, waiting for the yes before her feet moved. She had a small plant in her hands, a snake plant, the kind that lives through seasons and benign neglect. "Can I drop this on your porch?" No entry. Her text read. "Yes. Thank you." I typed and watched her set it down like a person setting down a habit. Inside, I moved the plant to the windowsill and made a mental note to like it. Daniel put the pears in a bowl and kissed my shoulder. "Maps," he said. "Maps," I said back. "The plant is still there. We water it when we remember. It survives the weeks we don't. It minds its own business and makes the room look finished. When we clean, I dust its leaves with the corner of a dish towel and say, 'Good job,' like it can hear." That night, when the porch light flickered its once-per-week allotment, I realized the sentence I'd rehearsed had done its work. I had said no without breaking the furniture. He had said yes without breaking his mother. Barbara had learned to knock on an idea before turning the handle. People think the breaking point is loud. Mine was a door that didn't open and a life that did. I slept the kind of sleep you get when the house finally believes you. The weeks after the night I said no, felt like we had finally found the map people keep recommending in articles. Not a perfect map, ours still had coffee stains and hand-drawn arrows, but it kept us from driving in circles. Barbara texted first. We met in neutral places. The spare key lived with Jamal, who waved at our door like a crossing guard every time he saw us. The plant on the sill stood up straighter than my posture. Then the calendar did what calendars do. It offered a test disguised as a celebration. It started with a group chat banner, gold confetti, scripted font, Judy's energy turned up to 11. Surprise 70th for Barbara. Let's host at Daniel and Annie's. Big cozy family vibes. She tagged me as co-host like a crown you don't remember asking for. Barbara responded with 3 heart emojis and a gif of clinking glasses. Daniel hadn't seen it yet. I stood in the kitchen with my phone and the kind of quiet you have to earn. I typed, deleted, and typed again until the sentence matched the person I wanted to be. "We'd love to celebrate Barbara, just not at our place. Let's do it at hers or at the Elm Street diner. We'll bring dessert and decorations." Judy replied with a frown emoji. "Your house is bigger." "It isn't." Barbara added, "I don't want any fuss. Maybe something simple. At your place." I wrote, "We'll make a simple fuss at yours or out. Our house isn't taking guests." Then I put the phone down and breathed the way you breathe when you say no with both kindness and spine. Daniel came home, read the thread, and nodded like a man who had asked the universe for a measurable problem. "I'll call her," he said. "I'll say the sentence." He did. He said, "We'll celebrate you, the door still has rules." She went quiet and then suggested the diner, which is what reasonable sounds like after it gets over itself. We picked a Saturday. I blocked the time on our calendar with a title that made me smile. Party Not House. The week of the dinner, the porch light took its one allotted flicker and the plant survived another drought. The day before, a text came from Barbara. "Quick stop to drop off plates for tomorrow." Yes. We were both home. We said, "We'll meet you outside." She arrived with a box of floral paper plates and a face that could have sold regret wholesale. He stayed on the porch. I handed her a card, what we'd say at the diner if we ran out of courage, and watched the arithmetic of her mouth add up to understood. The diner wrapped itself around the party like chrome and coffee. Barbara wore a blue dress and looked both younger and exactly her age, which is what happens when someone lets go of a fight they never wanted to win. Judy held court. Daniel gave a small toast that made 2 people cry and 3 people clap too hard. I gave Barbara a framed photo of the 3 of us at the farmer's market from a month before, her hands on a bouquet, Daniel laughing, me half turned toward both of them like someone who has finally learned where to stand. Barbara squeezed my hand in the booth. "You're very organized," she said, and this time I answered, "Thank you," and let the sentence mean grace instead of audit. On the way home, Daniel said, "That went better than my worst fear." "Most things do," I said, "if the door keeps doing its job." The next test arrived as plumbing. Plumbing is the boundary teacher no one invites. Tuesday at 3:17 p.m. Barbara texted Daniel, "Leak in your line. My guy can pop in with the master key." She included a selfie with a maintenance man I've never met and a pipe that could belong to any wall in the city. Daniel was in a meeting. I was on the couch with a spreadsheet that needed me to believe in columns. The building group email chimed a minute later. FYI. Planned maintenance on floors 5-7 next week. No access needed today. We live on 4. I replied to Barbara. Building says next week. No entry today. Please don't send anyone. She wrote back. He's already on his way. I called the front desk. They had not authorized a vendor. I called Daniel. Make it you, I said. Say it out loud. He called her. I heard his side. No entry. Not today. Not without us. He listened. He repeated himself. He did not move the door. When the maintenance man arrived anyway, the front desk refused him and I watched him leave through the lobby camera, baffled by a world where women mean the words they text. That night, Barbara sent a message that surprised me with how much it didn't. Fine. I got ahead of myself. I don't like the idea of water near your wiring. I worry. We do too, I wrote. That's why we follow the map. She heart-reacted the message. It felt like the app had built a tiny bridge between our phones. There's an old joke about boundaries. The universe hears you say no and says prove it. Ours arrived the following Thursday with an actual emergency. Barbara slipped on her kitchen floor and sent Daniel a text a person sends when they mean not to frighten you. Small fall. Fine. Slight pain in wrist. 2 minutes later, Judy wrote in the group chat in all caps, going to urgent care right now. We were out the door in 40 seconds. I grabbed the emergency envelope we keep on the fridge, insurance cards, contacts, the list I wrote after reading 3 articles and surviving nothing yet. Daniel drove like a person who knows yellow lights are not dares. I sat beside him and said out loud twice, we will be kind. The door stays a door. It felt ridiculous until it felt like oxygen. Urgent care looked like urgent care. Beige chairs, televisions arguing about weather, a child proud of his bandage. Barbara sat with an ice pack and a pleased-to-be-mild expression. She perked up when she saw us, which made me hate and love her in the same inhale. It's nothing, she said. I felt silly calling. You did the right thing, I said. Silly is what happens when nothing is broken. It wasn't broken. A sprain and a brace and orders to rest, which Barbara accepted with the hospitality people give small dogs, fond and skeptical. We picked up her prescriptions, stocked her fridge and left a list titled Today plus Tomorrow on her counter. Meals to thaw, numbers to call, the time we'd check in. She cried then, just for a second, into the paper towel she pretended was a napkin. I'm sorry I've been. A lot, she said without looking at me. Me too, I said and meant a different kind of a lot. On the way home, Daniel drove with both hands on the wheel the way driving instructors beg. I'm proud of you, he said. It felt like a sentence people should write on chalkboards instead of sorry. The next week was proof that help and access are not synonyms. We helped without letting the house become a revolving door. We brought soup and set it on Barbara's counter because she invited us in, not because we declared ourselves necessary. We scheduled 2 check-ins at the diner. Judy tried twice to restart the group chat committee. We answered with "we've got it" and no further clarifications. It turned out that help could be simple and contained and still true. On the 7th day, Barbara texted me, not Daniel, thank you, with a photo of the plant we'd given her a year ago, now bigger than the pot that liked it. She added, good fences aren't walls, they're maps. I laughed out loud in our kitchen all the way from the tile to the ceiling. I screenshotted the text and taped a printout inside my notebook under boundaries. Then I started a new page because the story felt like it wanted another word. Rituals. Ritual 1 became Fridays at the diner, 45 minutes, 1 booth, 3 people who agreed that coffee counts as an apology if you bring it before anyone asks. Barbara came with her brace, then without it, then with a scarf that matched the sugar packets. Sometimes we talked about the weather with the seriousness of a city council. Sometimes we edged toward harder rooms. Once she said, I'm learning to be a mother of a man, not a boy. Daniel stared at his cup and said, I'm learning to be a man without being a boy. I said nothing because sometimes the job is to leave space around a sentence so it can hear itself. Ritual 2 was the calendar. We invited Barbara to a shared family calendar with 2 rules. We suggest windows. We accept declines. She embraced declines like a person trying to like kale. Judy, shut out of the calendar on purpose, tried to rebuild the group chat twice more. Daniel archived both attempts with the quiet efficiency he usually saves for corrupted files. Ritual 3 lived at our door. Barbara got very good at standing on the porch like a person auditioning for patient. She texted, Drop on porch? We often said yes. Once we said no and she wrote, "Proud of you." I took a screenshot and put it in a folder called Evidence of Change because brains forget in the direction of old stories. We had a dinner at our place after a month, by invitation. She arrived at the dot of 7 with one dish and no tote of opinions. She hovered at the edge of the kitchen the way people do when they're deciding whether to be useful or respectful. "Sit," I said. "Be our guest." She sat and did the brave thing no one teaches. She didn't fix. We ate. We talked about nothing, which is the privilege you earn by getting through something. When she left, she stood in the doorway and said, "I like being invited." I said, "I like inviting you." Both sentences were exactly true. Of course there were relapses, tiny ones, the kind that prove everyone's still human. She brought over a rug she thought would warm up the room, and tried to lay it down before we'd answered the door. The lock held, so did our "no thank you." She texted Daniel a question about my job benefits. He looped me in and wrote, "Ask Annie." She sent me a recipe with "needs more salt" in the subject line. I renamed it "Enough as Is," and replied with a photo of dinner set the way I like it. Jamal turned the spare key into a running joke. When he watered our plant while we were away one weekend, he left a sticky note on the door. "Use the map." It made us laugh hard enough that I framed it. Barbara laughed too when she saw it, which is how you know a joke has laid its weapons down. The biggest test arrived not as intrusion but as news. One Sunday Barbara asked to meet at the diner early. We arrived to find her hands clasped around a napkin like she was keeping it from flying away. "I had a call," she said, and now she looked exactly her age, no younger at all. "Biopsy. They don't know yet. Probably nothing. Possibly not nothing." She smiled at us like the kindest hostage. The room tilted. Daniel reached for her hand and didn't let go. I did the only thing that makes sense when maps meet weather. I took out my notebook and wrote "now." Barbara looked at me like a person thanking a firefighter for spelling their name right on a clipboard. "I don't want to make a fuss," she said. "Proof people say unhelpful things even when they're brave." We organized rides, notes, a second set of ears for appointments. We also organized the door. "When you need us," I said, text. "If you need the house, say it. If you need soup, say it. We will show up like adults, not like keys." She laughed, small and real. "Like adults, not like keys," she repeated, and then she cried for exactly 20 seconds and stopped the way some people stop hiccups, with will and water. The test came back benign. We celebrated with pie at the diner and the quiet that often follows fear. Barbara said, "I realized something. I want to be wanted, but I don't want to be required. That's not love. That's a backup generator." She looked at Daniel. "I can be your mother without being your manager." She looked at me. "And I can be in your life without being in your pantry." I said the only sentence big enough for a booth. "Thank you." After that, the tone of everything shifted a half-degree toward easy. Not easy, just earned easy. She asked before offering. We said yes when we meant it and no when we didn't, and neither word became a referendum. The plant on the sill kept living through our inconsistency, which felt like proof you don't have to be perfect to be gentle. The last thing to change was the key. It happened on a Wednesday that smelled like rain, deciding, the kind of day the porch light rehearses for. Barbara texted, "Swinging by Jamal's." 5 minutes later there was a knock. Daniel opened the door. Barbara stood there holding a small shadow box, a clear frame with a key inside it, mounted on a piece of cardstock labeled in her careful cursive, "For Annie and Daniel in case you ask." She handed it to me like a medal I hadn't known I was running toward. "I like symbolism," she said, nervous now that the brave part was over. I thought, "This is better than a key you can't see." I put the frame on the entry table where the dish had been. The key looked safe behind glass, available and not available at the same time. "Thank you," I said, because 2 words can be cathedral-sized if you say them right. We stood there, the 3 of us, in a triangle that finally felt like a shape, not a trap. Daniel put his arm around me. Barbara reached out and straightened the corner of the welcome mat by instinct and then pulled her hand back like it had touched a hot stove. "You can fix the mat," I said, smiling. "It's not a boundary. It's crooked." She laughed and the sound went down the hall like something domesticated. We ate dinner together inside that night by invitation, with the framed key watching like a kind aunt. After dessert, Barbara asked if she could wash dishes. I said, "Yes please," which is not surrender. It's participation. She washed, I dried. Daniel put things away without moving labels. It felt like a house, not a lobby, not a fortress, just an address where people know whose chairs are whose. When she left, I didn't watch her from the peephole to make sure the hall was clear. I didn't need to. The door closed softly. The lock turned. The porch light did not flicker for once, as if even it was tired of symbolism. Daniel leaned on the wall, eyes on the framed key. "Do you think we can keep this?" he asked, not the object, the arrangement. "I think we can keep choosing it," I said. "Which is better?" He kissed my forehead like a period. We turned off lights. The house hummed the kind of hum that comes from machines that aren't pretending to be quiet. They simply are. Before bed, I opened my notebook and wrote the last entry on the rituals page. Framed key for when we ask. Fridays, diner. Calendar. Windows plus declines. Door, a door. Then I clipped the sticky note Jamal once left, used the map beside it and closed the book on a story that had learned which rooms belonged to whom. People ask what changed. Here's my answer that fits in a sentence. We decided that love gets a seat at the table and control waits on the porch. And then we chose it again the next day. Thanks for listening to Moonlight Confessions. New stories daily. Subscribe and tell me in the comments, what's your #1 boundary with in-laws?